Carly Marley is in it. Opus is one of the writers. So, yeah, it talks about all kinds of things. Yeah, I guess we've talked about it sort of on the show, so I won't repeat it. But, yeah.
Yeah. Very awesome. She's extremely talented. You should check out her Facebook page if you haven't already. And, of course, 12highchicks.com. Yeah, very interesting. And you're also quite the protester yourself, aren't you?
I definitely, go to all the protests for sure.
Yeah, I know we talked on our Election Day special about one of the protests that you attended that was kind of a uniquely formatted one that happened at Victory Square Park. Yeah, Did you want to tell us a little bit about that protest?
Sure. So that was with an arts collective that kind of assembled last year leading up to the election. It was called Power the Pussy. It's still in existence, and like they're doing some really cool social programs like on the downtown east side. And so the Power the Pussy, like the idea was like it's kind of a group of friends, and a lot of them are models, and I'm a photographer. There's a few other photographers involved. And so something we decided to do is use our bodies to kind of spread the message. And so it was like a topless protest, although we did end up doing like nipple coverage because we are women. We can't show our nipples in Canada. So, which is like one of the, it's not the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now, but like that was just an example of like one of the issues. And then we were talking about a lot about the election and just trying to help get the word out for people to get out and vote, which they did, so that's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, very exciting. So thank you for that. And in case you haven't figured out yet, we are talking about pot protests this episode. So one of the protests that I mentioned on the last show that I had some footage of was the protest that happened at City Hall on the drop dead date that was announced by the city on the 29th. So we have a short little clip of that now that we can play for you. And would you like a dab?
Sure.
Okay. Smoking on some Fant today. Hi. What size dab would you like?
Let's do small start.
Okay.
Try it out. What is it?
It is, what am I smoking? I don't know what this is right now, to be honest with you, but I know that it's Fant extract, and it tastes good, and it gets me high.
So this is already hooked up and there's no blowtorch needed?
No, it's all ready to go.
Goodness.
I normally don't rock the e-nail because I always feel like I'm going to knock the bong over, but I felt like rocking the e-nail today. Dabs on the go.
This is like, I've never experienced this technology.
Oh, really?
It's the first time, yeah.
Oh my gosh, no
I've
way.
seen one of these things. Like, I've seen the name.
Yeah, I got it set to 710.
Very
It's good to
cool.
go.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to play that clip, Alyssa? We are playing the clip of the drop dead date protest. Well, that goes on. Maybe I can. Ooh, I'll get some papers. Will it do?
City is charging $30,000 for a dispensary. Everybody has a right to do business. Why can't cannabis do business like everybody else? It's a hurt people. It's not a gateway drug. It's a helping. It heals. Pharma kills.
To make sure that everybody stays in business?
There are legal opportunities ahead for us to challenge these rules. If somebody gets a fine and they don't want to pay it, they might be taken to court, and there we will have our challenge. But that's okay. We're ready to support each other. This industry is very big. BC knows bud is very popular here and creates a lot of jobs. So there's certainly money to be put towards legal challenges to fight against this discriminatory, unfair practice of shutting dispensaries down.
As far as you know, will any of them shut down today?
A number of them have found other locations outside of the city, taking jobs and money with them away from Vancouver. So we will see some businesses choose to close because they're not able to afford this sort of unjust punishment. But that just speaks to the unfairness of City Hall and makes the public question, Why would the city shut down popular, profitable businesses in this city when everybody wants jobs and everybody knows that economic growth is nothing but beneficial?
That's great. Thank you. Do you know any that have closed? That have left?
I saw only a picture online of one that was...
So we have another little video that I put together. Went around and talked to some familiar faces from around Pot TV and the cannabis culture community. And I put together what I think is a pretty fun video. So if Alyssa's ready to play that, roll that clip while I roll this joint.
Yummy.
I was asked what my memory of the first pot protest I attended here was, and I have a memory of when there were still trees here, and there was very few people, like, you know, even fewer than are here today, and they were up in the trees, and I remember the police taking them out of the trees, standing on the sidewalk and thinking in a world that we're living in, why are they so focused on removing some peaceful activists for marijuana, which hurts nobody really, and that's sort of where it started for me. I never really thought about marijuana in that way until, you know, I saw this, and I was, of course they're not doing that anymore, and there are no more trees here, they're just a bunch of bark mulch, but we're still here, and I don't feel we really should be. This shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't have to continually fight City Hall and fight the government for basic rights, and I'm all for legalization and deregulation and let the people grow.
If you're talking about a formal protest, is different than the first time that we ever smoked marijuana, which in our minds too was a protest at the time. That was 1969, probably, something like that. Didn't really go to a formal protest till Vancouver times, and that would be early, mid-80s maybe, early 90s, something like that. Didn't know anybody then, but got to know them a little bit since.
Probably 1975, Nathan Phillips Square in Toronto, and it was organized by Normal Canada way back when. And actually, at that time was when I met Terry Parker Jr., who later on went on to fight the government and is responsible for us having medical marijuana in Canada.
My very first pot protest was in my hometown, Kamloops, BC, and I had just first started smoking pot because my best friends introduced me to Cannabis Culture magazine and Pot TV. And it was the year 2001, there was a BC general election, and the BC Marijuana Party that Mark Emery was behind was doing a tour across British Columbia in the Cannabis. It was a bus that belonged to former US President Richard Nixon, and it had been rented by the BC Marijuana Party to drive around the province holding rallies to get the vote out for the election. So my best friends told me, let's go to this pot rally down at Riverside Park in Kamloops, BC. And I went with them, and I'd never been in public smoking a joint, so I was sitting there with my voting sign, and we were waiting for the bus to show up, and it came. And I don't really remember a whole lot about the event, but I do remember that my friend, his mom drove us there, and it was pretty hilarious to be going to my first pot rally at the age of, I think, 16 it may have been. So yeah, that's my first ever pot rally in my hometown Kamloops, and who would have thought I would marry the guy who was behind that all.
The first pot protest I attended was in Nanaimo, British Columbia, where I was born and raised. And it was at City Hall there, and there was a guy with a bullhorn who was just shouting out pot slogans to the crowd, and there was just a few people there. And it was me and a couple buddies. I had just started smoking pot, so I was like 15 years old. Me and a couple buddies went there and just smoked some joints and sat around. And it was like somebody playing a drum or something, some people playing hacky sack. It was pretty cliche stoner, actually. But yeah, that was Nanaimo. I don't know what year it was, but it was when I was 15.
May of 1993, we organized a non-disobedient, just awareness-raising protest in Edmonton, and I think like 30 or 40 people came out to that. And then July 17th, 1993, we had a smoke-in, and over 100 people went to that one. We were like, okay, that one works better. So we've been doing smoke-in since then. So we thought, okay, it's better to be disobedient. It gets more attention and more people feel like participating.
Quite a few people in attendance.
A bunch. I don't know. I can't remember. I probably maybe 150, 200, couple hundred people. Maybe it's hard to remember. I don't know. 70 something.
My first pot rally probably had about 20 people there. It's still small town Kamloops, and this is back in 2001. So it was just a little gathering in the park where people were more nervously standing around, not really gathering in a rally. But it was pretty cool to be holding up a sign with a big pot leaf on it. And I remember me and my friends took that and put it up in his bedroom, and it was our memory from that rally.
Not very many. There were only a few. It was like just a couple people, less than 20 probably. I would think 20 to 30 maybe.
I do remember the very first guy that ever held up a sign at the art gallery. He sat on the steps and he had a little tiny sign that said pot and then the number 4 sale. And he had this little sign. He sat there all day. He never cracked a smile, never saw him. I looked right at him, I was filming stuff, and then he saw me looking at me, and he gave me this little wink. And he was the very first guy that ever did that. And the next time, more people brought signs. And the next time, people brought signs that they walked around with. And then the next time, people brought big bags of weed that they walked around with. And then it went from there.
It was a really nice day. It was sunny.
I remember sitting at the base of a big concrete stone kind of tower, and we were sitting back and looking far away across the park at where the bus was supposed to show up, and we weren't sure if we just smoked pot in the park or not because we're just young kids, I guess we're teenagers, and we did anyway because we saw other people off doing it. So again, it was pretty cool though to have a sign with a pot leaf on it with a big check mark, and it was like, whoa, I'm really out here doing something that's kind of, not allowed and kind of risky, but it was definitely exciting.
Smoking weed, hanging with my friends, just thinking about 420 and thinking, oh, this is a crazy concept, this marijuana, I really love this stuff. So I was really getting used to marijuana.
The organizers were teenagers and teenage girls, and it was also the anniversary of the Gwen Jacobs topless protest, so they decided to combine protests and also take off their tops, which made it on the front cover of every newspaper in Edmonton, quite frankly. That was pretty memorable. And then after a while, everyone went away and there was a jazz band playing, so I decided, in solidarity with the teen girls who had earlier in the day taken their tops off, I decided to go full frontal nudity, and I danced around with just my shoes and a smile on. And that was pretty memorable. And we got away with all of it. There was toplessness, assault and nudity, sharing of marijuana, marching without a permit. We had a jazz fusion band play without a permit. Nobody got arrested, and everyone had a great time, and it brought a lot of attention to the hemp movement. And I was like, I was addicted, man. I was addicted to protesting. It was so much fun.
You can quote me on that.
Yummy doobie. So we have one of the activists from the video in studio today, and you may recognize him maybe from around. We have Mr. McMahon in the house, in the hot seat.
Hey, how's it going?
So you've been to a few protests over the years.
Well, one or two.
One or two,
Yeah. I think there was one way back in the 70s, and then there was one, I think, last year. I spaced them out, really.
Yeah.
No. By the way, I just saw in the chat that someone said they saw it's raining substantially, and I like to use that word, in Fort Mac, so good on it, right on. I'd like to just pass that on if anybody's watching. It's a good thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really good news.
And so I've been to a lot of protests. But protests are a lot of fun, and it's great to go and hang out with your friends and, smoke a lot of weed in front of people. But it's, I find my specialty more is what I like to call guerrilla protests, or things you can do on your own. Mm-hmm. In other words, don't wait around for someone to organize an event. Be the event. A simple, here's an example, is I started a hashtag, #ITokenPublic. And very simple, because I realized one day I was looking at social media, actually Twitter, and I realized that the whole game has changed. Everybody who's got a political office has a Twitter account, more or less, unless they've been bad and had to get rid of it. And as has happened in quite a few cases. And so, you can tag these people, you can @ them, or you can hashtag them. So I would take selfies of me smoking pot in a public area, and then, of course, put it up on Twitter and in this case, Vancouver City Council, and, I could @ Justin Trudeau, @ Bill Blair, hashtag marijuana, one of the most used hashtags there is. Anything hashtag marijuana is going to get a lot of views. @ Tourism BC. So you do enough of those, and my intention is to look like people will, be looking up Vancouver tourism or BC tourism and go, what? Everybody smokes pot in public in BC? Is it legal there? And actually, I've even started putting out these crazy tweets like, oh, smoke pot in public in BC, here it's legal here, and I tell all the tourists, is it legal here? I go, damn, of course it is. Look at all the stores.
Oh my God.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Please, go ahead.
Just to be devil's advocate here, do you think that's really helping the cause to tell people that it's legal?
It's happened once. It's it's not like I'm running around with a sign up saying, ask me about weed. But no, it's because I was smoking. Mm-hmm. So somebody, is it legal here? And I'm like, yeah. It's legal here. Yeah. I was kind of sarcastic in a way, but the point is, I'm it's legal if you want it to be legal. So act like it's legal, and it is legal. I guess. Well, isn't that what everyone's doing when they opened up a dispensary and started dealing pot out of a store? Technically, or when we go down to 420 and we set up a tent and we sell weed in front of the police openly with scales, there's cash transactions, drugs are being sold. It's all illegal, yet we do it like it isn't. We act like it's legal. So technically,
that's the whole point of this topic of the show is that talking about different kinds of protesting, and so that's interesting, the #ITokenPublic, and I like the idea of encouraging everybody to do it on their own. Mm-hmm. Something I say is let your coworkers know. Everybody can be a part of helping break down the stigma.
That's part of act like it's legal, and it becomes legal if you are completely convicted.
But you can't say that. No, you're making a big jump there.
No, okay, it's not really, and this is true. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I won't argue that. But I'm just saying, though, if you act like it's legal, it technically, in a way, it is. I just go about like it's legal or not. I don't want to really argue the point with someone. If they want to argue with me, it's listen, you can call a cop, and they can decide. But, and that's usually they go, oh, well, they won't show up. That's my point exactly.
Yeah. And, I think that's why that's one of the reasons we're still protesting, because, almost all of us have, smoked a joint on the streets, in the park, and whatever. But
I hope so.
There's always like this thing in the background because it still is
elite.
a criminal activity. Like,
yes.
People are getting criminal records as we speak. As all, even as all like the bylaw officers right now are going into dispensaries.
Yeah.
Like,
my friend just got caught for an ounce, and he's like,
wow.
Yeah, they have been following him for 6 months to do that. Yeah,
Crazy.
so that's what your taxpayer money is going towards in Vancouver, where
so like
there's,
when you say like act like it's legal and it's legal, like that's the point I really beg to differ on, because
No, and I maybe I'm rephrasing it wrong, but I meant, but I mean, the more people normalize usage, and it's that continued. This is why 420 has gotten so big. For instance, the event itself. So a lot of people feel totally empowered to come down and participate at that event, as it should be. I'm just saying you can carry it a step further. Now, there's a lot of simple, small things that you can do that are much smaller, where it doesn't involve smoking pot in public as well. It's like, for instance, putting up signs on poles, or spray painting pot leaves on the sidewalk, with stencils, or on phone poles, or some people put up stickers. They go on a sticker rampage. And they get, you get a couple hundred stickers made up on the cheap, and you walk around and you slap them up on stuff. I mean, there's lots of various ways people do stuff. What are you doing here, dude?
It's gonna give you a big kiss on the cheek.
Oh, come over here then. All right.
Well, things have digressed quickly. Another
so
fun
now,
trick that you taught me, actually, that I got to practice on Saturday was the sidewalk chalk.
Yes.
I love that. Thankfully, there's some sidewalk chalk around, and I did a nice big pot leaf right on the doorstep of City Hall when we were smoking up after participating in the Global Marijuana March that happened this weekend. I did love peas pot, because I love those things.
Well, with no rain forecast, sidewalk chalk is a great thing to be using.
Yeah.
Saxon's office. Were you there for that? Which here? No, I wasn't here. I wasn't here for that. Oh, well, you guys chalked up the walls and stuff, the brickwork?
3 times, and the cops said next time we do it, we're going to jail.
Yeah. Well, because the building is private property, the sidewalk was fair game. Right? Well, did you hear what happened when I did James Lunny's office?
Oh, yeah, Lunny.
So I was sidewalk chalking my MP in Port Alberni. Now, he had a corner office of a building, a 2-story building, that had residential up above. There were condos. So in front of the building, this huge area of brand new blacktop. So it was like writing on a brand new blackboard. That's how cool
awesome.
that was. And I was writing out huge messages. And I would do it like at night. And then the next day, they'd show up and have to come out and throw buckets of water on it. And so finally, the cops phoned me up to complain. And I went, and first of all, he goes, "Was that you?" And I says, "Yeah, of course it was me. Why? What's the problem? I'm using sidewalk chalk on the sidewalk. Please come and arrest me." Like, what's your, blah, blah. So we got into a discussion about it. The reason I had to stop, I agreed to stop, was because he said the people who live above have to look down and could see it, and it was disturbing their peace and whatnot and well-being. So I went, okay, I'll concede that just to be the nice guy, but so the way I got the last one in, this is why, is there was like about 8 or probably 6 steps going up to his office, because it's right on the corner. So I went back and wrote on the face of all the steps. Walking.
That's awesome. All right, so some of the protesting that happened in the city this weekend. We've got the Global Marijuana March video now.
Global Marijuana March 2016.
We're going to march through the streets. We're going to take our time. We're going to go, make sure that everybody has the chance to see us and smell us. We're going to be lighting up a lot of joints. We're going to see a lot of passerbys. There's going to be a lot of faces looking at us. People wondering what we're doing. We can blow some smoke their way and tell them to join us. Join us to come to City Hall and peacefully protest what Gregor Robertson and Carrie Jang are doing to medical marijuana patients. No prison for pot. Leave the dispensaries alone. The dispensaries are not causing harm, so don't cause harm to the dispensaries and the patients who use them. Global Marijuana March. Smoke weed.
Free joints. Free joints in the Global Marijuana March. Joints. We need to light the way of the march.
The worst cannabis that's ever been out there has barely harmed anybody. The best alcohol that's out there have killed people.
Yeah. We're taking the bridge.
Get used to it! We're here! We're high! Get used to it!
Yeah, Vancouver.
Get used to it!
Yeah, Vancouver. Make sure they know we're not going anywhere.
We're here! We're high! Get used to it!
We're here. We're high. Get used to it.
Don't make us go back to the streets, Vancouver. Gregor Robertson, please. This is harm reduction. We want our marijuana safe spaces. That's what we want. Safe inhalation centers. They should understand that pushing marijuana users onto the black market is wrong. Are you listening, Gregor Robertson? Vancouver loves weed. Vancouver loves marijuana. and stop hurting the patients of Vancouver. We want marijuana dispensaries.
Hey you! Yapping! Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay.
Smoking weed at City Hall. Hi, Greg.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy Vancouver! Hello to the rest of the world.
All right, you guys send me smoke signals, eh?
Marijuana March.
I love you guys. I'm glad you all made it up here with us.
Love you all.
We're all from a different tribe, but the same planet Earth that grows the green, right? We set our differences aside.
I think we have a real job to do right now in the city of Vancouver, and we all really do need to unify, because right now it's a very serious time and a very serious thing that's happening here in the city. And I think what's happening is, on a municipal level and on a federal level, we're kind of being swindled in a way. We're being swindled because these guys keep telling us that they're going to legalize marijuana and they're going to allow for things like our dispensaries here in the city. They say, yeah, we're going to have a regulation system. But in Vancouver and the city got all these kudos for being the first city to really move forward on legalizing the medical marijuana dispensaries. But the swindle is that they say they're going to do it, and then the regulations actually are prohibition in disguise.
I want to see that thriving thing without chains holding it back. You know what I mean? Like 7 clubs in a city where 150 are thriving. That's just not economically reality. You know, it's means the black market's just going to continue under those conditions. So it's important that we come out, we stand up for these clubs, and we do. And if you're a member of a club, you got to get behind that club.
Got Opus in the corner taking a dab. So that was some of the global marijuana. Okay, guys. That was some of the global marijuana march 2016 in Vancouver. And one of the activists that you probably saw in the video, as well as in our video about the first pot protests that activists went to, we have Mr. David Malmo-Levine in the studio today. And he's a bit of an expert when it comes, he's an expert when it comes to a lot of things, but he's definitely an expert when it comes to pot protests.
23 years I've been committing civil disobedience, and I learned a few things along the way. For one thing, don't let the stonedest person lead the parade. I learned that from
example, not a good idea. You want them going down the right way on the one-way streets and all that. And we started doing pot rallies in Edmonton, and we had young people do most of the organizing and the postering. So those people also decided to take their tops off, the teenage girls, in honor of Gwen Jacobs doing it a couple of years before and winning the right for women to go topless. And I thought it's a good idea to explain the idea of victimless crimes by committing as many as possible in the same place at the same time and watch how everyone has fun and no one gets hurt. So we did that. That got Mark Emery's attention. He noticed our front cover of every newspaper in Edmonton was reporting on the smoke-in and toplessness and flagrant violations of law. We had a jazz fusion band play without permission. We did probably a few other things that day. But,
thanks for stopping by, Mick.
See you, Mick. So we have some shots of that from the CBC archives. I think. Are you going to play that CBC archive one?
Unfortunately, there's copyright issues with the CBC archive. I was really disappointed.
Okay, well, maybe we can just provide a link.
Yes,
we'll provide a link to it, and you can watch those topless teenage girls yourself. Oh,
they
well, the
let us
CBC.
Use it. It's a really fun video to watch, and it kind of
but
gives
there's
a little
link
bit
for
of a story.
It's the you can Google it too. It's called Canada's Most Flamboyant Pot Activist.
We do have the other video that you sent me, which
was ours.
I think it's amazing. Yeah, we got a Pot TV archive video to play for you guys today.
The link is called Rally Do's and Don'ts, Part 1, and then Part 2 is Hug Power. I think that's also floating around there too. Check those out as well. They offer some practical tips on the act of hug power and civil disobedience. Hug power is when you hug the person getting arrested and don't let go. You don't touch the cops. You don't link arms and walk into a phalanx of police officers. You don't say anything impolite towards the police. You just hug the person getting arrested and refuse to let go. And then that puts the police in a bit of a dilemma. They either have to beat you all up in front of all the witnesses and cameras and lawyers.
Which happened last year.
Yeah, which happened on July 1st of 2015. Or they do what they do most often, 19 times out of 20. They'll just let whatever you're doing happen. And that's kind of fun on pot protest day because all the smokers can smoke, all the dealers can deal, all the growers can bring their plants, and the cops can't do anything about it. It feels empowering for the crowd, and it feels like something they want to do again. So you get bigger and bigger crowds every time you resist the injustice with the hugs.
All right, so we've got a very cool video from the Pot TV archives. If you want to roll that now, Alyssa.
David Malmo-Levine! My name is David Malmo-Levine!
You're watching High Society with your host, David Malmo-Levine.
She was a good girl until she visited dopefiends.com picture. Hey kid, wanna buy a book? Here, I got something to show you.
Welcome to dopefiends.com. We provide you with information that is safe, profitable, and productive. Learn safety techniques that will help keep your plants, shrooms, and laboratories clean, well-maintained, and hidden from any nosy neighbors. Be more profitable by knowing the best varieties for you, best techniques, and the best maintenance for your operation. Want to increase your productivity? We have books and videos that will show you how to utilize your space more efficiently, written by professionals in the field. So now that you have the information, and you know where to get it, and you know where to find it, be wise and buy from dopefiends.com for all your growing knowledge and esoteric wisdom.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of High Society. I'm your host, David Malmo-Levine, and today we're talking about rallies. What you just saw there was a rally poster for the May 5th, Saturday, May 5th, Drug Peace Rally in Vancouver. We're going to march on the drug courts and the American Embassy and just say no to that brand of cultural imperialism. This show, I'm basically going over what I know about throwing rallies. And I've been throwing rallies with a little help from my friends since about 1993 in Edmonton. Started doing it in 1995 in Vancouver. This isn't just staying lit. Better. Anyway, I wrote down what I knew about rallies and put it in Cannabis Canada number 8. It's in the back issues at www.cannabisculture.com in an article called How to Sell Pot and Save the World. It's basically all I know about how to put up a Hempology 101, a rally, and out-of-the-closet marijuana distribution activist center. And some of the hints I came across just from experience are that you should never let the stonedest people lead the parade, and that you should probably start off every rally with a series of safety tips. And what those safety tips are, I usually begin rallies by saying that we should all swear at the beginning not to hurt anybody or break anything. And we should all swear also to make as much noise as humanly possible, thereby setting out the parameters of what's allowed and what isn't allowed, what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate at a rally. And that also deals with agents provocateurs. The police are known to send in people to cause trouble at rallies, and if we all swear to do that, then they can't. You mention the word agent provocateur, you explain what they do, and then that kind of defuses that move out of their bag of tricks, because you can just hand over anybody who is hurting people or breaking things to the police. They'll be around. You might as well hand over people like that to the police and just not tolerate that, at least at pot rallies. That's my feelings on the subject. But then I say, and if we all don't want to sit around and watch people getting arrested who shouldn't be getting arrested, there's something we can do. So this isn't so much a rule as a bit of advice as to hug arrests, anti-arrest hug resistance, more like. It's kind of like hug power. That's what I call it, hug power. And what hug power is if you see someone getting arrested who shouldn't be getting arrested, you go up to them and give them a hug, and you don't let go for any reason whatsoever. And that presents a problem to the police. They either throw both of you in the paddy wagon, or 3 of you or 4 of you in the paddy wagon, or they let you go. And half the time they let you go, and half the time they have a hard time busting you. Either way, you win and they lose. In my book, it's better to be resisting arrest out in front of everybody than having to deal with arrest one at a time behind closed doors. So on rally day, I suggest people be a little more assertive wherever they are than they usually are. Now, as these videos will demonstrate, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The more video cameras that are there to record the event, the more pressure on the police to behave nicely. Now, the history of nonviolent civil disobedience hug arresting goes back to the 60s, and I've managed to find some archival footage of Berkeley in the 60s, a film called Berkeley in the 60s, which demonstrates this hug power admirably. Then we scoot on over to Rodney King briefly and just realize the effect that piece of videography had on police's behavior around cameras. And then we get into some early hemp rallies in the 90s. You'll see some Jack Harrar and some Mark Emery there. And then we get into a whole bunch of rallies held in Vancouver, and gatherings and raids and this and that and the other thing. And I'll leave it to you folks to email me back with some of the do's and don'ts that you find on those bits of tape. There's so many to count. Rallies between 1996 all the way to last year. So check out all the do's and don'ts and all the ways you can improve your rally in your area. We also have signs and banners and puppets and lots of different ideas that you can scoop from us here at Pot TV on how to improve your own rally. So tune in, because at the end of the show I will provide you with some links where you can get more information on the legal defense for the civil disobedience actions of all types, and again, where all this is written out in great detail in Cannabis Canada magazine. So, hope you enjoy, and see you after the show.
That modern man suffers from a kind of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast to his scientific and technological abundance. We've learned to fly the air like birds. We've learned to swim the seas like fish. And yet we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters.
I woke up this morning when the man said on freedom. Well, I woke up this morning when the man...
More than any other cause, the civil rights movement became the wellspring of student activism and inspired our entire generation. In 1963, Berkeley students began to band together with black activists to protest discriminatory hiring practices of Bay Area businesses. We sat in at restaurants, supermarkets, and automobile showrooms. Our biggest challenge came when we tried to secure jobs for blacks and other minorities in the hotels of San Francisco. A picket line formed around the Sheraton Palace while negotiations with the Hotel Owners Association took place inside.
It was getting to the point where we were saying we are going to create a confrontation. We're going to create a situation that's intolerable, and we're going to force you to respond to it in some way, and we're willing to get arrested in order to do it, and now the ball's in your court.
All of this in this elegant lobby, I can't convey to you the effect. It was like the riffraff coming to the White House or something, and the real democratic masses had moved in and taken over, you know, saying, no, you cannot continue to run this hotel in this racist fashion. The world is being redefined. Things cannot continue on that way. They just won't.
Doing some dabs over here. Do you want to dab? Sure.
I will explain that video you just saw. It was about to show the first time in the history of humanity, that hug power was used as a tactic, and it was to desegregate hotels in California, in Berkeley, California, I think it was like 1960 or 1961. First time in humanity that I could find evidence of.
I think the ancient Incans used hug power against the
Incas? Well, no. What we have is videotaped evidence, and what they did was they occupied the schools that they overtook and shut them down, and then the cops came in to take them out, and they were holding on to each other and making it really hard for the cops to drag these students out. And they also demanded that the cameras were going to be around to record their resistance. And it was just before the first civil disobedient protests in Edmonton that I'd been organizing, July 17th, 1993, and I was like, what are we going to do when they come to arrest? Well, we can't fight. That's aggression. Cops will win. And we can't just sit around with our hands in our pockets doing nothing, because that's passivity, and the cops will win. But there's that third road, assertiveness. That's when you don't let them do bad things, and you don't do bad things yourself. You're not violent, but you're resisting arrest in a maximum non-violent method, and that's hug power.
How'd that work out on Cannabis?
Well, on July 1st, 2015, it resulted in the police becoming the bad guys again on television. All the news reports showed all these protesters. None of them were violent against the police, but they're definitely resisting arrest. And
which is the other half of hug power. If you lose, then they look like the bad guys.
Well, yeah. Either way, the only way you lose is if you don't attempt it.
But if you do it and you do it properly, you're not violent towards the police and you're just resisting an unjustifiable arrest, then you win because the cops look bad. And notice they didn't do that at the next protest on 420 because they don't need the bad optics. They don't need the bad publicity.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a picture from from July 1st last year. And in it, there's all you can see is 9 Vancouver police taking people down. You can see maybe 3 or 4 people in the mix. And the rest it's like 9 cops. And that was like right on top of that group of when Neil was getting taken away, and it's just like for something because like that was like a new event to me in the last few years, and from what I've heard, like it's been such a peaceful event for so long.
15 years before
for that to like erupt last year.
Yeah, the last time they really tried something in earnest was in 1998. They threw a 16-year-old pot dealer in the back of a paddy wagon. But before the paddy wagon could drive off, everyone surrounded it, linked arms, lied down, started singing songs.
Well,
the last time they tried something at one of the rallies was when they arrested Marijuana Man Steve at the 2010 Global Marijuana March, and we
managed to arrest him.
No, well, we unarrested him with hug power.
Well, we dissuaded them from attempting to arrest him by surrounding him.
Yes. Well, at first they took him, but he ended up getting screwed on that anyways. But I think you and I talked down the young police officer who was fresh on the scene, who didn't realize what was going on there, and we got that all on film. If you look up Global Marijuana March 2010 Pod TV, you'll find it.
Yeah,
and you can see us talking to the cop. He actually backed down.
For my first Cannabis day, I had a pretty interesting experience. I was expecting it to be a lot more similar to 420, and I wasn't expecting to need to participate in Hug Power, but I was with you. I did the best I could, DML, to hug onto your legs and
you got
stop
busted.
you from getting in that paddy wagon.
You got busted. You got handcuffed. You got thrown into the back of a
did.
paddy wagon. You were wearing like hot pants or something like that. And
These little shorts.
You went above and beyond. She
dived into the mix.
What most people could do, and it was very brave of you to do that.
Yeah, you did.
It was very brave. Were you
grabbed onto a leg.
Were you
That's
like
the thing about
shaking when it was happening?
When I was shaking all day, I was
Really?
It was such an impulsive thing, and it was such an adrenaline thing because when we showed up, there was just so much tension with all the cops there, and I just got so pissed off. I was just like, why are you trying to hurt
There was an army of them, and they were all getting in everybody's face. They were puffing up their chest.
So as soon as they
and
went
standing
for
around
Neil,
right in the middle of the
I
rally.
didn't even think. I just went for it, and all I could hear, I got a boot on my head, and I had my face down, and all I could hear is, get the girl out, get the girl out, get the girl out, before they rushed me off so they could link up arms because they didn't want anyone in the doggy pile. Well, I didn't see any of that. I wasn't there for any of that. I'm not.
Well, you and Dominique both get thrown in the back of the wagon.
No. When I was in the paddy wagon, apparently why I was taken out of the paddy wagon, I'm not sure about this. I was in the paddy wagon first, and then they took me out after putting DML and Neil in the left side, and then they pulled me out and pulled me down the street and put Cam in the back. And I was told the reason why they pulled me out is because you can't have a female and a male in the same section of the paddy wagon. And you can only have 2 on either side of this sized one. So I'm not sure at what point logistically she would have been. I don't know if there was 2 paddy wagons maybe, but
They didn't send enough paddy wagons to take us down.
yeah.
Now, the thing about women doing hug power is it looks 10 times worse when a cop's beating up on a harmless woman than a harmless man. So women actually have like much more hug power in them than
Power advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, disabled people too. Try to beat up someone in a wheelchair and still remain the
J-Mac.
hero in the minds of the public.
And they will never pump me.
And
I want to see him try.
You're in.
Don't fool yourself, J-Mac.
As long as you keep it nonviolent, you're invincible when it comes to hug power.
Hey man, I've seen video of the cops throwing people out of their wheelchairs onto the ground though.
Yeah, I mean, but
Vancouver
the thing,
cops?
Not
again,
Vancouver cops.
Okay, well,
we
they
just
have-
have to
they're
do our
trying to-
best
No,
to
they'll just
remember
taser
that
you to death.
That will
I
just bring
suppose.
more attention to the cause that we're representing.
And so I think the important thing too is to get to the point where hug power doesn't need to happen.
We're doing our best to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, there are some causes that are worth getting arrested for.
Definitely.
And if I had ended up getting taken downtown that day, then I'd still feel like it was worth it. So, you know.
Oh yeah, I've never regretted any of my dozens of arrests, but I might regret being a coward if I knew there was something I could do to stop this genocide of the medically autonomous people. I would regret that, but I've never regretted any of my arrests. They're all
There was one quote I'm remembering from the video we referenced, and we'll leave a link to the CBC video with you, where you were at a rally and you asked a cop a question, and I'm trying to think of what the wording was.
Yeah, I said, do you feel in your heart you've done everything that you could to resist this obvious witch hunt? And the cop said, I don't know what you're talking about. But no, the nice thing about asking police officers pointed questions is sometimes their response, even if it's a non-response, their facial responses, whether they smile or not, gives you an honest answer to what they're saying. So it's always good to come equipped to any rally or protest with a bunch of pointed questions to ask cops or the emergency people, the parks board, or anybody who's in a position of power. Ask them a bunch of questions, ask them on camera, and once in a while you get lucky and it makes the news, and then you've really done your job as an activist, because your job is to speak truth to power. Your job is to put them on the defensive, to put them in this situation where no matter how they respond, they look idiotic and they should probably stop doing what they're doing to you. That's your job. So as many of those as you can. Being yourself, protecting growers and dealers and allowing them to be themselves, protecting young people from arrest, because really the only time people die of marijuana-related activity is when it's marijuana prohibition-related activity. Like Daniel Posse died in 1992 from a pot rate on 15 grams. How many of us have had that much pot on us? So for 15 grams he died. That's one death. And they have 0 deaths to point to when it comes to marijuana abuse. So right there, on the balance of things, we should stop the harm of the young through marijuana prohibition. Marijuana prohibition is the actual thing that might harm the young. Marijuana, red eye, dry mouth, that's about all they got to worry about. And operating heavy machinery while impaired. That's possible, but that's also possible with caffeine. So we should have similar rules for soft drugs. I see the best rule we can come up with is the Senate's recommendation of 16 years old that would remove all the stigma from growing, dealing, and using. 15 and unders, if they have their parents' permission and a physician's supervision, they should be allowed to puff too. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's what we can settle on, but we shouldn't settle for anything less than that. Otherwise, we're sending the wrong message to young people and saying marijuana, alcohol are equivalent, or marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol. Those are the wrong messages to send to the young people. We have to send the message of truth. And if we stick to that, then we'll get everything we want. Anyone who wants to grow can grow. Anyone who wants to deal can deal. Anyone who wants to smoke can smoke. And we'll have a decent model of legalization that the rest of the world can follow and model after us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Jeremiah Vandermeer, you have an interesting perspective of protests as well.
Oh, yeah. They're terrible. Don't like them. Hate them. Can't stand them. No, I like protests. I don't know if I have a unique perspective of them, but
well, you've got a pretty
I sure have a lot of fun when I'm at them.
behind-the-scenes perspective.
Well, my behind-the-scenes perspective, yeah, they take a lot to organize sometimes.
It's a lot of work, buddy.
Depending, I'd say this last Global Marijuana March though was a bit interesting. We had a little bit of friction with some of the other activists who were there on site who wanted to go a different route. In the end, we worked it all out. There was unity amongst all. It ended up being awesome. We took over the Cambie Street Bridge, which was super cool, and that was fun. And yeah, we've never had our own bridge before since I remember, like since I've been here.
Well, if the city doesn't shape up, we might have to keep doing that. Or if we have to march to Jody Wilson Ray Boole's office, we might have to do that too.
We should do that.
So
nobody was home at the city hall when we got there, unfortunately. So. Yeah, but we told Gregor and Carrie Jang.
Actually, Kush Queen did notice that there was someone wearing a city of Vancouver lanyard.
Oh.
And they weren't participating with anything. They weren't talking to anyone. And they were standing around just kind of
I was telling them to take notes for Gregor.
So
Tell Gregor to leave the patients alone.
Stop harming people.
Well, you
Marijuana
didn't-
dispensaries cause
you
no
didn't get
harm,
a
so
chance
why
to see
cause
it,
harm
but-
to marijuana dispensaries and the people who use them?
Another thing I wanted to mention before I go is I figured out how to do this better, to send out ideas into the collective consciousness. Every time we have a rally, we take a group photo, as many of the crowd as we possibly can in one shot. And that's the one that usually goes viral and gets out there, sums up the rally.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we put these kind of Roman-style banners that hung down and that were printed out with some memes that were easy to read from afar, that you could read from the stage, and you put that in the crowd scene, and we also use those for the marches and the rallies too, summing up our best arguments on why we should have an inclusive legalization model, I think we would be doing our job even better than we did before. So that's what I want to do. Hopefully I'll get them.
I like Roman style.
Yeah, well, they hang down so you don't need a wind in order to read them, right? They
We
hang.
could get cool hats and people could march with them.
Yeah. But yeah,
A little broomstick
and
thing on
I
the
figure
top.
the four big, I'm going to try to do this for July 1st. The four biggest memes, the ones that are most powerful for us, is that cannabis doesn't make your kids stupid or crazy. That cannabis and caffeine have similar risks and similar costs to society. That hemp ethanol could replace gasoline and save the world. And that hemp is also a phytoremediation. It's a soil cleaner for radioactive waste. Like, these are things people need to know now in this post-Fukushima world, so that we can save the world and evolve on beyond oil wars and oil spills and climate destabilization and nuclear energy. We can move to renewables. And we can do that by removing the stigma around youth use.
Right. On this issue, David, I think you're really onto something, and I think one of the last things we have to do with marijuana is really remove these stigmas that are so attached to it with everything. Yeah. Part of it is the kid thing, and actually I was at the Davie Street location this morning, and I was talking to Willie, who works there, the manager of the Davie Street Lounge, and we were talking about that Eden has recently been kicked out of the building that we share with them on Davie Street. Well, they haven't been kicked out. They got the $250 fine, and they decided to leave. So part of it is because we're too close to a school. They're over in the West End. There's a school not too far away from our location. But between us and the school is a BC liquor store. And just down the street from the school on the other side are two other liquor stores and a bar with, a patio where they drink booze all the time.
I bet you within 300
That's where Hub
meters.
is.
There's
Bet you
another
within
two
300
liquor
meters
stores,
you can
yeah.
buy tobacco and maybe pharma as well.
Guaranteed.
And those
It's
have
everywhere.
Huge death records.
But Willie and I were talking about what would really be cool in the city of Vancouver is if we started a program at the Cannabis Culture Dispensary that we have, or some of our lounges, where we took a percentage of the proceeds and actually gave that back to the school system in some way to bring attention to the whole concept.
Yeah.
Not only that we can use the money that we get in a legitimate way from cannabis and the safe use and so on and so forth, but we can show that it's actually, when you take cannabis out of the hands of the schools and out of the black market, you are helping the kids. You put it into a system that's controlled and regulated so the kids can't get access to it. So, and we would love to call attention to both of those things at the same time. And we can call it Think of the Children.
Yeah, well, it's important to people realize that this money doesn't just stick in our community. It goes back into the general community. When you legitimize and you have a whole bunch of stores all paying taxes, those taxes go back to the community. That's what we want. But in order to do that,
get rid of the black market. If you
Yeah.
don't want your kids getting weed, then get rid of their access to it, which is, it's a lot harder for kids to get booze than it is to get weed. I can get weed anywhere when I was a kid, but it was hard to get booze.
none of that'll help unless we teach people that general population statistics is the evidence that kids aren't getting crazier and they're not getting stupider. And so you
it's
have
part
to
of all of it, yes.
I think it's key, because unless you do that, you'll always have some stigma, and that stigma will always be used to justify overregulation and monopoly. But if you address that issue, they ain't got anything to attack us with.
And if people want to find out some more information on the effects of cannabis and the young, you can go online to cannabisculturehq.com and pick up a copy of Mr. David Malmo-Levine's book.
Yes, it's also available online for free in a couple places. Just Google, does cannabis harm the developing minds of young people? And my name, David
Does
Malmo-Levine.
cannabis inherently
inherently harm? It's important because anything will harm you if you misuse it, but inherently means it'll harm you no matter whether you use it properly or not. And if you use it properly, actually, you'll live longer with less stress and fewer wrinkles than if you don't do any drugs at all. So cannabis is a good medicine, even for teens. Like, teens are either stressed or depressed because they got hormones, they got people, exerting their will on those teens, and teens could really use a good relaxant or antidepressant. Cannabis is the safest, cheapest, and most effective antidepressant and relaxant on planet Earth. That's a fact. Sorry. End your internal dialogue. That's just a fact. You're going to have to live with it.
And you can extract the CBDs from cannabis, and so you can apply them to, say, if a kid needs medicine or something along those lines, and they don't want to get high, you don't have to be getting the little kids high. But look at Dr. Gupta. Look at Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
Little kids can't get high. They don't have the CBD receptors or the THC receptors in their heads.
Well, they do get them at some particular age.
Yeah.
Not so.
But
yeah.
Read Dr. Ethan Russo.
Still doing research on that.
Read Dr. Ethan Russo's work on the subject. It's linked to the article that we produced. Don't worry about cannabis and teens, or don't worry about cannabis and kids.
I can't remember the title.
I can't remember the title, but it's a recent blog. It's up on Cannabis Culture's blog page, and just type in cannabis and kids and my name, and you'll find it. Google's very good with that. I got to run, but here, smoke this. Keep your head held high always.
Yes. David Malmo-Levine,
Thank you
ladies
so
and
much
gentlemen.
for coming on.
Yeah.
And he has quite a few interesting articles on cannabisculture.com, so you should
About
check
1 billion
them
of
out.
Yeah. And in 12 High Chicks magazine, we also talk about like pot and parenting from a mother's perspective.
Oh, very cool.
You know, because inherently kids ask questions, they're curious, and you know, it's always better to talk to your kids about all those things than to have them, you know. And just like talking about the teenager thing, like one thing, you know, again, playing devil's advocate, is so like one thing, I mean, just I guess talking about the different aspects of the different marijuana protests. One thing is like the joint toss. That's something I wonder about, because like the thing is, there's no way of knowing that there's teenagers in the audience, and like as a cannabis community, we're always saying like, well, actually I can't speak for the whole cannabis community. I think that like, okay, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to them. We'll keep cannabis out of the hands of teenagers and let it be regulated until let all that stuff get figured out. But like that's the 1 or 2 days a year where the cannabis community is like, hey, everybody smoke, you know. Unless it's like close up, you know, like I know Neil, like the other day I saw like a few young people came up and he's like, I need to see your IDs, you know, so like there's definitely people that try to regulate that, but
and I know a lot of people who do that personally, and they make a point of never selling to kids and stuff like that.
I don't think we don't really give weed to kids ever. Even when we're tossing, I mean, when the girls are tossing to the crowd, that's, I mean, a little bit different. But there's usually not a heck of a lot of kids in the crowd. And at that point, honestly, sometimes it comes down to self-regulation of other human beings. Again, what we're tossing out is a harmless plant.
And I'm guessing that there's not a lot of
it's kind of up to the kids as parents if they don't want them at the 420 rally. And in a lot of ways, I'm a libertarian. I don't think that I have to babysit other people, even if they are teenagers. You know, when I was 15, I was smoking weed and I didn't give a fuck what anybody said. And I wasn't going to listen to my goddamn parents, and I wasn't going to listen to you or anybody else. And I was 15. So I was already in charge of myself at that level. And in a lot of ways, I think by us trying to restrict all the time what other people do, whether they're kids or not, it might have the opposite effect.
And I think that
but like
by
we're
the
also
time
trying
you're that
to
age,
work with the government for fucking legalization.
Yeah, but by the time you're that age and you're going to 420, you've already made that decision. You've already been smoking. And I think that a really important part of 420 and similar events is showing that we can peacefully do things this way. And I think I started smoking weed when I was a teenager. And when I started smoking weed during high school, I stopped drinking vodka during high school. So thank fucking God I did get my hands on weed. And I think that we're probably helping a lot of people. Like
David Malmo-Levine.
Even old school smokers, you know, I'm talking to some people who are still in the cannabis closet, you know, regular 9 to 5 adults from Ottawa, and they're going, yeah, you know, I did smoke when I was a teenager, and it didn't affect me negatively. Like, I see the point. I started when I was 15, 16. It helped me with stress.
David Malmo-Levine said in one of his broadcasts, he said, if cannabis is harming people, show me the bodies. Show me the bodies. And that's the thing is, we've been tossing the joints out to the crowd for so long that there haven't been anybody, there hasn't been problems.
Like, that was like
There's
only,
no
so like, that is what I'm saying, like, that's
Common
what the
sense.
devil's advocate view is. That's like
Yeah.
what you hear when you go to your parents' house and your in-law. People are like discussing.
Yes.
You know, is they're like, well, they give, you know, they're selling it to kids. You know, so I'm just saying,
Right.
like, the optics of everything are so important in this next
It's
year,
true.
like leading up to legalization.
Yeah.
And so, like, also, like, on the other flip side of that, in terms of the government really starting to understand that marijuana can help teens, I hope that those pathways and that access really improves so people don't have to do what, well, I didn't start doing this till I was in my 20s, like going to really sketchy drug dealer houses.
Yeah.
But like, that's not where we want our kids going.
Exactly.
We want them to go to a doctor's office.
Yeah.
You know, to talk about, find out all the different, you know, like Eastern, Western, plant medicine, everything that can work
Yeah.
together for like mental health and health in general, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, by regulating it, it definitely, it helps set up safer access for
It's true.
teens.
It's true.
You know?
And, you know, I think in the future, after legalization, and if we were to be able to make it that size and have it be some sort of event that's gated, there's no way we could control it, though.
No.
Like, there's no way we could control something like 420 or any of these events unless we gated it off and checked ID, at which point,
Yeah,
like,
it's, like,
that's not an
exclusive.
organic
Yeah.
protest. This is an organic protest. And I first participated in 420 when I was of age. And with the way people are talking about it, if there's a lot of people who would have it, so people my age still aren't allowed to smoke weed. I'd still have to wait another 2 years to be able to smoke weed. So
I think the point that David was making earlier too was that sometimes we have to be truthful about, like, there's optics, but there's also a perpetuation of stigma.
Yeah.
So if we continue to pretend that marijuana is harmful to kids, which it's actually not, and we have, I mean, the studies themselves show, and David's book is about this particular topic. David's book looks at the only studies available, all 24 of them. There's 24 studies that we could find on the planet about this issue. And we did a study of the studies, and what we did was we took these studies and we held them up to actual scientific scrutiny. So what a study, if you're going to be a legitimate study, has to do. And guess what? The ones that were critical and said that marijuana caused all these problems for people, they don't stand up to scientific scrutiny. They're absolutely fraudulent, is what I would say about them. One of them stood up to even the remotest, just a few of the points, and that was pretty much it of all of the ones. Now, that doesn't leave you with a lot. When you can basically throw all of the studies related to the marijuana issue in kids into the garbage, and the only ones that do actually have any worth are the ones that show that it's really not that harmful to kids, including a long study in Jamaica that they did with pregnant women. And I mean, there's a lot of evidence on the pro side, and that's why
it's interesting. I'm seeing.
You'll see articles in Cannabis Culture and other places about pregnant women using marijuana as a relief form because it actually has, you know, even pediatric societies and others there has been some work on this
there's
end.
cannabinoids in mother's milk. So, you know, no matter what, you're getting high off cannabis as soon as you start breastfeeding. Because you need to activate the just like any of your systems in the baby's
But
body that
again-
you need to build up, you need to, you know, activate the endocannabinoid
You got to be
system,
honest about
so.
what's there, and sometimes it seems like these things might be bad,
Well,
and
and
that's what that stigma is.
it's
like
interesting,
something
though,
that
because-
seems, just because it seems like it might be bad, doesn't necessarily mean it is.
It
and we
seems
have
like
to-
the mainstream perspective is starting to change, though, because there's more and more, as we talked about before, there's more and more articles coming out in the mainstream media that are pro-cannabis and that are highlighting what's wrong with prohibition. And I'm seeing more and more that are talking about kids using cannabis oil, pregnant women using cannabis oil, and I'm seeing them on mainstream media.
Dr. Gupta.
And it's every single day I'm seeing I'm seeing more and more pro, and I think the media is starting to go, okay, we probably want to get on the right side of this.
well, think
before
of it-
It's interesting
too
to
late.
like how like the
It's
media
like all the things we've been saying all
controls
along.
the stories and perpetuates the stigma, and you know, just exactly like how they, you know, present, like this protest day, you know, all this stuff happened, and it's how they shape the story. It's storytelling, and like
It is
you know, like as
optics for sure.
storytellers and as like activists, we need to just like help reshape that story. And it's
Totally.
just,
Another
You're
thing
right.
I've
it's
been
been so long time coming, and I think like activists before us are like, you know, why didn't this happen to in my lifetime? But like, it's not what we're just doing now. It's like this
All
is the
of it.
collective effort of all the cannabis
Yeah.
activists before us,
Yes.
and everybody who's serving jail time right now or has a criminal record. You know, it's such a collective effort, and it's
Which
gonna be
is
such
why-
a
That's
glorious
true.
day
And
when
optics
it's legal.
are super important. And I know that giving cannabis to kids is a hard sell. That's not an easy thing to sell.
Well, no, but the thing is, even
but when you
even
look at,
that,
but you look
I'm
at
seeing
Sanjay
it
Gupta,
on the mainstream media with them bringing on kids
Think
who
of
are
it-
having, you know, the kinds of
Yeah.
stories that we've been talking about in the community for a long time. Those are finally being heard by regular, everyday people, non-cannabis users who have been so blinded by the stigma for so long. You're going, oh, well, if it's on the 6 o'clock news and there's this little kid who's being helped, and they're seeing it in an entirely different way.
And think of it that way.
It's
When a
it's
6-year-old kid
different.
is when a 6-year-old kid is taking it, and that person is very sick, and this we're talking about a
Exactly.
frail individual taking it. Well, that's a pretty safe medicine for a frail individual to take. So if it's not hurting a person who's extremely sick and frail,
Yeah.
then how is it going to hurt a normal person or
Well,
a
and then
person
you've
who
also
has
got
full health?
you've also got the mother coming on camera listing off all of the pharmaceuticals that would be needed to help the sick
Right.
child, and they go,
Jesus.
have you seen the side effects of that?
Yeah.
And like, you might as well be giving your kid heroin. Like,
No kidding.
it's that
Well, it
bad.
pretty much is.
So, exactly. So she's like, there was just no way I was gonna put my child through that. And I think it's amazing and really important that these stories are slowly getting out. And another thing I've been noticing in the mainstream more and more is music. More music that's mainstream, other than just like Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa and, you know, rock and roll, classic rock. You're hearing more pop songs and songs that are getting regular radio play, being allowed to slip in those 1 or 2 more lines about smoking pot. And it's, I'm noticing that they're allowed to get away with it, and it's almost like they're like, all right, we'll slowly break down the stigma with them. You know, it's an interesting kind of switch to see right now.
Yeah, and you know what I was gonna say is in terms of like that, like looping back to that personal, you know, different forms of like personal protest.
Yeah.
And then like before the show, we were talking about like just like new technologies of consumption, how you can do it more subtly, you know, like the little preloaded vape pen things that you guys are talking about. And the cool thing about those is that it allows you to kind of take a stand and say, hey, you know what, I am a cannabis user. But do it in public, do it at work, you know, and just be a witness that it's something that helps you.
Yeah.
You know, because you won't be bothering people with the smoke if that's the issue. And like I think that's a great form of like personal protest and just standing out. Like for me, it was super hard to come out of the cannabis closet. You know, I was afraid about traveling. I was, you know, I think it was like easier to say that I was queer, you know, rather than like, oh my God, like my whole family's gonna know that like I smoke a ton of pot, you know, for good reasons.
Where are you from? Out of curiosity, hearing that makes me really curious. Where
Really?
you like raised? Yeah.
Where I was, well, Edmonton and Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
and
interested.
Pennsylvania. All over.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very
Yeah.
well. Sorry, I was just curious.
With what part of this?
Well, just with how that you were more comfortable coming out than you were coming out of the
Right.
cannabis closet.
You know what? I think that was more because I was surrounded by a lot of like queer friends.
Oh, that makes
queer,
sense. Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
whereas I was like really for a long time, like I was the only person in my friend group who smoked pot, and I was often seen as like
the stoner.
That's the stoner. And,
Yeah.
oh, that's MaryBeth.
Yeah.
And,
everyone in the room's kind of like agreeing right now.
You know, MaryBeth like got out of this bad relationship, and then she just became a stoner. And like the fact is, I got out of a bad relationship that I was in most of my 20s, and then I made a whole bunch of positive changes in my life, and largely with the help of cannabis. You know, like
Mary Jane is
so-
the best girlfriend ever.
Yeah, high five to that. Yeah.
Let's take another dab. Dab to that.
Yes.
Yeah. But
It's 5:28.
5:28.
We
oh,
went a
yeah.
little bit over today because I was really excited about the topic this week. I was really excited to, you know, kind of thank some of the old school activists and some of the people who have been fighting for this for so long and, talk about some of the exciting things. So sorry for taking an extra half hour of your time, guys. It's
it was worth
excited
it.
to see.
It's too bad we
for
couldn't
having me
play.
as your co-host.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was great having you. You take a great spot in the seat. If that sentence makes sense. I don't know. It's so hard to make your sentences make sense by the end of the show.
Take another dab and try and make sense of talking.
And the vicious cycle is whenever you lose track of what you're saying, the best segue is take another dab. So
that's funny. Well, good show. And it's too bad we couldn't play the DML CBC most flamboyant thing, but David has been doing it for a long time. And I really liked your footage of the march. That was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You did a really great job out there too, Carly, and you've been really helpful around here. So, yeah, you've been really doing a lot, busting your hump for Pot TV. So it was good.
Yeah,
good
I think you've done like a great job, like taking over the show and like.
I think so too.
And it's awesome to have like women in these seats.
Yeah. And she's kicking ass. This is her show. She's the executive producer of the show. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like love what you've done with it.
You should see her like, you have it in front of you. It's like listed by
I
the
know.
second.
It's like
listed by the damn second.
Yeah, I can't put it up now because I've written notes on it. But like,
I know you should be.
I do. I guess
I like having a show on Pod TV. I love you guys for watching, and I love having somewhere where I can say things that I think need to be said and draw attention to important things. So thanks you guys for listening to me.
Definitely.
Good work.
All right. We're gonna keep getting high, and Wednesday is From Under the. Is it From Under the Influence again now?
I don't know.
Is it back? It seems like it's changing every week.
It's still From Under the Seed Desk.
Okay.
But you can call it From Under the Influence. You can call it From Under the Seed Desk. I don't really know.
Okay. Well, that show.
It's that.
The
it's
one
Greg,
with Marijuana Man, Al the
Friends.
Alchemist, and Kush
Ms.
Queen
Kush
in
Queen.
between is on Wednesday at 4 p.m. We have Mr. Jeremiah Vandermeer back again on Friday for Cannabis Culture News Live. Oh, and we also have Expert Joints Wednesday at 4:20. Thursday at 4:20. Yeah. Jeremiah Vandermeer at 4 p.m. on Friday.
Yeah.
And then back to me again next week, Monday, 4 p.m.
Nice.
All right. So.
Another hour and a half next week, maybe.
Oh, we'll see. Maybe. We'll see. I will see you guys then. Stay high. Bye. Bye. Stay high. Bye.